Cool. So welcome back everybody to another episode of the Fulfilling Destiny podcast, or FD podcast for short. I am your host, Jan-Marini Pacleb, and with me is Franky. Franky Day. Oh man, I always get your last name wrong, and I've known you for so long. Dalog, because Dalog.
Dalog.
Yeah, because I think about it, and it's like Daylog. Like, no, that's not right. All right,
No.
Dalog. So we're with Franky Dalog. Ignore the car noises in the background. We're kind of doing this a little differently. Franky's in his car right now. His apartment. His roommate is currently using it for whatever reason, and private talking. Want to make sure that the sound quality is decent. His car is close enough. Close enough.
It's decent enough.
Hey, I mean, you have a decent phone that has pretty good internet quality, unless you're using 5G.
No, I'm using 4G.
Oh, 4G. Hey, it's perfect clarity. So, this is actually a very unique episode of the podcast, and I say unique because, I don't know how to segue into this. You wanna segue into this, Franky? Introduce yourself. Before I screw this up indefinitely and ruin my reputation.
Well, hi, I'm Franky. I am a trans masked person of color. I go with the pronouns with he/they, so very similar to Elliot Page.
Mm-hmm.
And there you go.
Elliot Page. All right, so he/they. Okay, yeah, that's pretty simple. So trans man, person of color, and he is by far one of my longtime friends since we were, I can't say living together, but we were in the same community in Japan. So we went to the same school and we were classmates at some point, and we have a very, I guess, interesting story on how this was brought up.
How we became friends.
Oh, that's a different story for another time. But like, let's be clear here. So you are a trans man, person of color, right? So we're asking our viewers to be open with their minds, that we will be meeting different people of different, like, from different origins
and backgrounds.
That includes race, sexual orientation, sexual identity, and everything else in between. So because we have a unique individual here, it's also good to be open to those unique perspectives. We want to know their struggles, their successes, and then, these are still, like, people are people, and we can't write them off as anything less than that. Treat people compassionately and treat them kindly. Like, that's what I could really hope for the rest of humanity these days, right? Since it's been up and down just in general with the community, LGBTQA+, it's been up and down, up and down, up and down. But right now, I say it's an up because I get to catch up with you, and we could explore how we got here in the first place. All right, you want to start first, Franky? Or shall I?
Sure.
All right, go ahead.
We'll say I'm 26. I live in the greater Orlando area. Mm-hmm. I work for the theme park industry.
Mm-hmm.
I have been on hormone replacement therapy for the last 4 years, and I recently just got top surgery over the summer. And I actually got that in California. I got it done with Dr. Krieger of Thousand Oaks. He's also a brilliant plastic surgeon, and he takes insurances, which was the big part.
Yeah, you really did struggle with the insurance policy part because you weren't sure if your company was able to fund it at the time. Mm-hmm. And I looked at your Facebook posts because you kept a pretty thorough journal. Like, your Facebook posts are, like, very thorough. All the hashtags in between, like, this is what I got. This is what they gave me. I'm not happy about it. I'm gonna talk to the company later. Emails. But honestly, that's, like, you want to get what you want, and it should be covered, and luckily you got it without too much fees in between. But speaking about your voice, this is not to bash on your voice, okay? So how many years has it been? 7 years?
Uh,
It's been a while.
Frozen has been out for 7 years, so yeah, 7 years.
Okay, before we get so here's the thing when man, my English is really bad today. Excuse me. When Frankie and I got reacquainted with each other, we were really into Frozen. We really loved the movie. We loved what it meant and what it could have meant to our communities at the time, the bisexual community and then, transgender community. What was actually interesting, and it came up in a conversation that I still feel very sorry for. To my knowledge, as kids, I thought already Frankie was already just a cisgendered male. That was my thought at the time when I was really young, and then when I got better acquainted with him as adults, it didn't process in my head. I don't know if I'm going to word that correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when I saw you again for the first time, I really didn't see, I guess, like air quote, right? Air quote. The feminine traits, right? Like
Right.
breasts, wide hips, a really feminine like voice. So I didn't really think nothing of it at the time. It's just like, oh no, it's just my boy Frankie. We're
Right.
chilling and we're with your sister Donica, and we explored a little bit of San Diego together, and it was a lot. And I gave you a heartful letter, and I know you better still have it somewhere in your apartment.
Somewhere in my room.
It's somewhere there. No, not doxing. But so when you explained, when you came out to me, I was actually very confused, because to me the whole time I thought you were already just a cisgender male. It's like, so, okay, so what was the difference? And I was trying to understand, and maybe it's because I was younger at the time, I couldn't, I guess, see the perspective of why you didn't feel so comfortable in your original, I could say original body, is that the right word to say?
You can just say gender assigned at birth.
Your
That would be
gender
the
assigned at
easiest
birth.
way.
Yeah, you weren't so happy in the gender that you were assigned at birth. And I wanted to say, to the past version of myself and to you at the time, it's like, I am so sorry that I got that wrong, and I was trying to put you in this little box at the time, and I couldn't understand. But
Right.
I like to think now that I'm more understanding and open to hearing your stories. I may not like every single one, because man, dude, you post a lot. You post a lot on a daily. It's
Yeah.
hard to keep up.
You're not wrong. Well, when you have
this,
like 2,600 people on Facebook, so it just kind of gets lost in there.
yeah, I mean, but I do see you are probably the most prolific person on my Facebook or Instagram anyway. So it's like, all right, coffee of the day number 1, coffee of the day number 2, stuff like that. So like seeing your transition literally on social media, like since you moved out from your old place into Florida now, seeing all of that was actually pretty amazing. Like, make it pink, make it blue. Like, you made that kind of like your slogan, and you had like a following. It's like what it meant going from where you were, gender assigned at birth, to being the person that you are now. So I'm very happy for you that you finally got to this point. I know it's not over. I know I like to think it's not over, but
it will never be. But at this point, I'm content with it.
And speaking about that, since you are from the community, I want to hear from you. How would you, as a transgender, how do you define transgender?
Basically, trans is just anybody who doesn't feel comfortable with the gender identity they're assigned at birth. Now, you can be trans and non-binary, or you can just be non-binary, or you can just be trans. There's not one way to be trans. You don't necessarily have to have gender dysphoria, which is what used to be in the DSM in terms of gender identity disorder, which is now debunked essentially, thank God. But you can still check in the boxes in terms of, like, say, gender euphoria versus gender dysphoria. Now, I like using gender euphoria a lot more than gender dysphoria, because it's harder to explain to somebody, you know, the pain, the hurtfulness, you know,
Right.
that I feel in terms of like how I look, how I sound, how people perceive me as. But it's so much easier to be like, oh, I really, you know, get happy or excited when somebody uses he or they, or, you know, some old white man called me buddy and pal, you know, those very like, for me personally, it was masculine terms, you know, the masculine looks.
You felt
Um,
validated.
yeah, exactly. I felt validated in that sense. So I like using gender euphoria versus dysphoria. 'Cause I don't want to feel invalidated. I want to feel validated. So it was like
Mhm.
the easiest way to explain to others why, say, getting top surgery was validating to me, or going on hormones was validating to me.
Mhm.
It just, you know, in my personal journey, that's what makes sense to me the most. But in terms of overall the trans community, if you're not comfortable with the identity that you have at birth, that essentially means you're trans. Now it's up to you personally whether you want to identify as trans or non-binary or both, or however you want.
Mhm.
But that's essentially what it is. It's not necessarily anything that you need to be X, Y, and Z to be trans, and vice versa.
Mhm. Okay, so it's too, I guess you could say personal, like personal taste. I'm just using it very lightly. I'm using air quotes here.
Yeah,
It's
it,
just
it's
thought,
it's your
yeah.
it's your personal journey and your personal life in terms of what you want to be and who you want to be and how you identify. Because like sexuality, everything is very fluid, and
Right.
also like with gender identity, because
Mhm.
we grow up with very rigid binary restrictions that
Yeah.
if you like trucks, you have to be a boy. If you like dogs, you have to be a girl, and
Oh
vice
my
versa.
God. Like,
There's no like
yeah.
middleman in terms of things where like if that's what it means to be trans, then you know the world will be upside down, but it's not. Being trans has nothing to do with the rigid binary. It's what you feel personally as a person versus saying, you know, X, Y, and Z. This is your interest, so you have to be boy or girl. I'm over
Mhm.
here with two shelves full of frozen stuff,
No shame, man.
which
No
you know
shame.
is primarily primarily for you know a different demographic, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm a girl or you know I'm very feminine or something like that. My
No,
interest
no,
has nothing
no.
to do with my gender identity as core.
Right, right. It's just there's a lot of nuances involved, and it's like you said, it's not
Mm-hmm.
checking a box that you are what you are. Because like just like you, like for instance, you said you had a shelves upon shelves of frozen memorabilia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, like you growing up, like instead of playing dolls, like yes, like at the time in Japan, like we had Barbie dolls, Bratz dolls,
Right.
Mattel. Yeah, Mattel is a very good company when it comes to making toys, but it didn't felt my interest. It's too pink at the time. So I
Right.
liked Bionicle, Legos, action figures, like G.I. Joe, stuff like that. It's like that was more of my
Right.
niche. It was my niche interest, and obviously video games and everything else that's not at the time
Right.
to your air quote
Inherently feminine. Right.
inherently feminine, right? And then
Like,
even
hey, I just bought this.
hey, you do. I do have a Olaf somewhere. Oh, Olaf's down there. Nice, nice pin. Oh, that's so
I
cute. Oh,
just
dude.
bought that today.
Oh man, it's like you. Whenever you go to that theme park and you leave, you always come back with something. Always. I see it in your social media. If I didn't see it now, I was gonna
Always.
see it later in your social media. um, not so not because I don't want to get too deep on like what was that moment for you, because that could be a little too personal unless you would like to share it. Uh, if
In
you feel,
terms of my gender identity,
uh, yeah, so it's like, what was that moment for you that you felt not necessarily happy in your assigned gender at birth? If you don't want to talk about, that's completely fine. We could
now,
move it up the
well,
scale.
my issue is that I don't have a recollection of that moment,
Okay.
only because me personally, I have been this way for so long
Oh, okay.
that it wasn't something that it's not something that clicked right away.
Mm-hmm.
It was something that grew over time.
Okay.
Now, personally, I didn't come out until my senior year of high school, which was 2011.
Yeah, yeah, you
But
did. Mm-hmm.
I've always, dressed masculine, like inherently like masculine things,
Like
at
suit and
least
tie and stuff
my
like that.
until, yeah, well, it was even until like what, fourth or fifth grade, even because I had pictures of me in like a Yu-Gi-Oh shirt or a Pokemon
Oh,
shirt, things like that.
yeah.
So me as a person, I was always inherently geared towards that way, but so it never clicked right away.
Mm-hmm.
I just knew something was off for such a long time. I just didn't know what it was. Now I found out
Okay.
about, I'm gonna say 2010, 2011 is when I found out the LGBTQ community because I was a very sheltered child, as most military kids are,
Yeah. Oh,
and I knew nothing about the gay community. I didn't know anything about the trans community, and it wasn't until got on Tumblr and things like that where I was being more exposed, and I
oh,
found out the
Tumblr.
term androgynous.
Mm-hmm.
Androgyny is what threw me in, and then I was like, oh, it's not male or female. It's kind of like both in terms of looks at the time. I didn't know what the difference was,
Right.
and then from there, I got into the terminology of the trans community, and that at the time it was more rigid at the time when I was coming out in terms of
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, if you fit these check boxes, you're transgender.
Right.
Now we have a better understanding, but back then, we did not.
Mm-hmm.
So I I basically fit those check boxes, and a lot of other trans people with very similar posts were posting things that I felt that I was like, oh, this is what it means. This is what I feel, but I don't know how to describe it in words.
Mm-hmm.
No, this is what gender dysphoria is, and I didn't know what to do, and I was like, oh, you know, what can I do? Because like once I started becoming more adamant about my gender identity,
Mm-hmm.
um, I was being invalidated in terms of my clothing choices,
Right.
and I couldn't really tell people why I didn't feel comfortable in girl clothes. The only thing I could say when I was wearing boy clothes was that I felt normal, that I
Mm-hmm.
felt that it was comfortable, that I was at home with it. And
Mm.
there was no other word for it. I didn't know what being trans was or anything.
Oh wait, hold on.
So for
Give
me
it.
personally,
Hold on. Sorry. Wally. Just Wally a little bit. Your thing went in and out. All right.
oh,
I think you're back. Yeah, I think you're back. All right,
good.
sorry. Yeah, you're good. Continue. So you weren't you felt more at home or comfy in guy clothes. You felt more
Yes.
comfy in pants and, baggy tees and all that
Right.
jazz. But not like skirt shorts, tight
No.
tops. No, 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 no.
No,
Personally,
I
really,
didn't
yeah.
like anything restricting. I didn't like anything that
Mm-hmm.
had too low cut of sleeves and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So back then I used to find the most gender neutral girl clothes I can find just so I can get away with it.
Right.
Um, in school I would wear just my band t-shirts from like marching band and ROTC because
Right.
they were just unisex shirts, and that was the only way I can get through the school days. Now I came out summer of 2011, which was the summer before my senior year of high school. I came out to my mom via handwritten note, and then I came out to my dad via email when he was on his way to the Philippines.
Oh.
Because at the time I didn't want to face,
Mm-hmm.
the confrontation. Because there was
Yeah.
very many arguments and very many
Right.
disagreements when everything
Mm-hmm.
happened.
Mm-hmm.
But I was being stubborn. I kept doing what I wanted to do to
Mm-hmm.
make myself feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I wore tux to prom and homecoming.
Woo woo.
Um, but that's when I fully, came out originally. And then I actually went on the news back in 2011 or 2012, really, on my local news because my school administration was like, no, you can't graduate on the boys' side. For some reason, we had gender lines.
That's kind of
Yeah,
weird.
it was weird.
We do
And they're
alphabetical
like,
order.
right. And they were like, oh, no, you can't do it because that's not what your birth certificate says. And I was like, okay, sure. I went on the news. It was like Channel 13 local news. And I basically, just saying, why do I have to, graduate on the girl side? Why can't I go on the boy side and all that other stuff? So it aired. And then a few days later,
few
my
days
school
later.
district emailed me and was like, yeah, my school district emailed me and they were like, we actually don't have a policy that stops you from doing that, so you can. So I was successful in terms of being able to graduate on the boys' side during my high school graduation.
Dang. Yeah, when you were telling me that story, and I was a year younger than you at the time, about to like go to college, and I was like, hey, what was? Oh, you came out to me by then. By the time I was heading towards college, I was just like, so what was that like for you? And you're like, yeah, we had a boys' side and a girls' side. I'm just like, what? Because we had since we went alphabetical order,
Alphabetical.
Yeah, then you have like 16 Hernandezes, right? Because it's a very common last name. Then you have like three, you have three females and then three males. Just from like just looking at them at the time. I was like, but why would you have that's so archaic, guy sign, girl sign, guy sign, girl. It's very old fashioned.
It was.
Yeah, but luckily for you, and it's a good thing that there was no policy against it. So having you on the news, hopefully for that next person after you, another student at high school was able to do the same thing.
It did actually. So they established a policy a year after I graduated.
Yeah, I mean that's also like kind of bad on the school too, man. It's just we're not name dropping the high school, don't worry, we won't. But that they're updating policies to be more inclusive and not so rude about it.
Well, because there was nobody to challenge them, so that's what it was. It was like nobody, huh? Yeah, nobody challenged them at the time, so I was the only person to challenge them about it. Because, like, here's the thing. They didn't say anything about my senior high school photos, because they only take your school ID. But back then I went on the guy side and nobody said anything. But because there's no gender on your school ID, they didn't really know. But it wasn't until I brought it up about graduation that I knew that we had gendered lines.
Okay. Yeah, that's a very strange thing.
So it wasn't an issue until I brought up graduation. Yeah.
Oh, actually, since we're gonna follow your timeline, right? So after graduation, you were helping me prepare for college, right? My driver's license, my first job, and everything. Sort out like the true adulting. I reached out to you. It's like, like, bro, help me out, help me out, dude. How to adult? And while I was dealing with obviously like the first baby steps into adulthood, you were actually struggling with legal paperwork about changing your gender status, right? Like passports, IDs, stuff like that. You want to tell me a little about how that went?
Yeah,
how annoying it was?
Well, Nevada wasn't terrible. Nevada adopted a very similar policy to California, where for your license, you just need a doctor's note. Now, the doctor's note doesn't necessarily need to say that you're on hormones. It just needs to say that you're transitioning.
Okay.
There is a legal document from the DMV website that you can just, print out and then give it to a doctor and have them sign it and go back to your DMV. Now, my issue with the DMV, they didn't know how to process it, even though they had it. I had to go back twice because I lost my paperwork the first time. It's the same process of getting a name change or an address change at the DMV, but the problem is they weren't sure how to process itself. I paid like $8, I think, at the time. So, like, again, it was just to get a new ID to reflect it. But it took me 2 trips to get them to process it because they didn't know what they were doing.
The DMV.
Now, other states, other states don't have it as easy.
Right.
Some of them would require you to be on hormones, or some of them require have surgery, or
Mm-hmm.
some of them require that you need to have your birth certificate changed and other things like that. Now, luckily, Nevada, again, very similar policy to California, where you don't necessarily get other legal change to make that change at the license.
The license level, right?
Now, for the passport,
Right.
very similar. The hassle of getting another passport, which is always the hassle regardless. But like the driver's license, you just need a note from a doctor. Now, I didn't do the proper paperwork the first time, so they sent it back to me. They're like, no, we can't do this. Turns out I needed the letter to be on an official letterhead from the hospital or clinic. Otherwise, they won't take it. 'Cause actually, I just printed off a random letter that I wrote from the internet and gave it to my doctor, and he signed it. But no, it needed to be printed from the hospital itself.
Oh, yeah. Well, getting official letterheads it's pretty hard. You have to go through in my personal experience, you would have to talk to multiple lines to get approved and then put it in a
Right,
paper and then for the doctor to sign. But that could be for another thing. But in
right.
your case, it's yeah, that
Well, it was easier said than done. I just didn't know when I was
mm-hmm.
doing the paperwork.
I mean, paperwork is
Now,
hard. It's
yeah,
like who
paperwork is
tell
hard.
it's like who could even teach you at the time how to do it? You were
Nobody. That was the
essentially you're
thing. I
doing
was
it
doing
alone.
everything by
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah, you're doing
I was
it by
doing everything by
yourself.
myself. Mhm.
Yeah, because I mean, like for me getting my license, I can always talk to my dad, my mom, because they drive. But then if in like your situation, when you have no one else at the time who's close to you who could tell you how to do it, that's kind of
Right.
you get you had a harder time. So that's
Yeah.
that's quite
Now,
unfortunate.
luckily, the passport had the same effect as a birth certificate, so I actually haven't changed my birth certificate. I only just changed my
So
passport.
so your birth certificate is still your assigned gender,
Yes, technically.
technically, but everything else in terms of like
Reflects male.
adult legality, yes, it's male. Okay.
Hmm.
When you,
Yep.
I don't know, maybe this is just my like, maybe it's just I'm just curious. When you take a look at your birth certificate and you look at it now, how do you feel about it?
I don't remember the last time I saw it.
So it's been a
So
hot
like
minute.
it's been a hot minute, so I can't really tell you my exact feelings on it.
No,
I
no,
just
it's not
know
to
it
be
still says
exact.
it.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I look at it at this point in my life, I don't feel anything because
Mm-hmm.
my license says male, my passport says male, everything else is,
Mm-hmm.
legally the same. So it's just that one document, but it doesn't come back to me in terms of like background checks or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, whatever. At this point, I'm just too lazy to change it. I'm actually born in California, so I could get it changed. It's just a hassle of doing it, which I'm
It's just
like,
a
I don't
hassle to
want
do.
to.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
well, since now that I am like I'm more immersed now into being
Mhm.
being more connected to my own community. I know that some individuals, right, I can't name them here obviously, but it's like some individuals when they look at their old selves
Mhm.
and they still feel pain and all
Yeah.
like it could be too soon, or maybe it's it's just too hurtful of a memory to look at, and then you know
Yeah.
and then there's some individuals now they're just like that person. I laid that version of me to rest. It's not me
Right.
anymore. It's gone. That's not it. That's history. And then now
Right.
this is you like we'll take a Jake Cyrus for
Right.
example.
Mhm.
They he at the time Cherise Pempego, uh that's right. Hopefully I didn't
Yeah.
botch
It
her name.
sure is.
Yeah, at the time
I don't
Cherise.
remember how to say her last name either.
It, at the time, a cisgendered woman, Filipina solo singer, powerful voice, and I would like to think like one of those role models to look to. It's like successful, all those things. Then she went off the grid, and then she came back,
Mhm.
and then
Yeah.
it
Mhm.
reintroduced himself as Jake Cyrus, and that was a shock
Yeah.
to me And I was just like, oh wow, this is something else. I remember looking at his new Instagram saying like,
Mm-hmm.
hi, my name is Jake Cyrus, and obviously like I followed his content, listened to his songs, and then at some
Mm-hmm.
point he did kind of like a reflection, and he's like, to Charisse, he made like a
Mm-hmm.
heartful letter on Instagram, and then he's like, I think it's something more of like saying goodbye or saying like until we meet again, whenever that is.
Right.
And I was just like,
Mm-hmm.
oh gosh, that made me tear. I was just like, oh no. It's like, what is this?
Yeah.
Who's chopping onions behind my eyes? Like, what are
Right.
you doing? But I,
A lot of
mhm,
trans people have that similar experience in terms of, telling their old self goodbye and things like that. Now, thankfully, I didn't really go through that experience, but I know
mhm,
plenty of people who do.
yeah,
But that's only because I've been this way for so long. It's not like I did a 180-degree turn like
mhm,
Jake did.
right,
So it can be very extreme in terms of transitioning, or it can just be gradual, and there's no right way to transition. And I think that's where it is. It's like I didn't have to say goodbye to the old me because, again, my name that I use is still my birth name, so it's not like I have to. Oh, okay, I guess.
you didn't have to start over,
Right, I
really,
didn't have to start over.
right,
It was just more like I can push through. I
right,
pushed through whatever obstacles I had in front of me.
mhm,
Because again, I didn't have to change my name. My name is the same as it's always been. So I didn't have to go through the process of trying to figure out a new name, trying to find a new name, and things like that. The only thing that's different is just I started going by a nickname, but that's Franky. But my name is Francis, and it will always be Francis. Now, the fun part is that I'm legally a junior.
yeah. When you
I
told
like
me
I have to
that,
add that.
when you told me that, I was just like, okay, first of all, Francis, because that's your true legal and still current name, and then you had a
Hmm.
junior, and I'm just like, and you're see, this is like the younger, not so educated version. He's like, and you're transgender, like cocking my head, just like,
Because you
but
said
your
all the
name,
signs point to male, but then
yeah, yeah, literally, all the signs point to male, and then it just like, well, we don't know what what's going on with the body, the mind, and everything else. I was just like, oh, dang, I must be really shallow to only see the surface level of everything else, you know?
well, right, which is fair because I've done informative speeches in my communication class in college, and I came out through that way, and my classmates were like, "What are you talking about? What do you mean you're not a cisgender male?" They're like, "We
Yeah,
just thought
yeah.
you were gay." They're like, "We just thought you were gay," and I'm like, "No,
Well, I mean, yeah, but like you said, like assumptions. We don't want to make assumptions of
right." But
people.
like, especially if you're just mentally checking into boxes in your head
Yeah,
of what it is to be a male and what it
yeah,
is to be a female, then it's very easy to make assumptions, unfortunately, what we're all trying to get away from.
right. And then speaking about those check boxes, I want to get into the physiological aspects of your transition, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's
Right.
fine.
So this was an ongoing conversation between our younger selves a couple years ago. This might be triggering for those. We're just gonna put that here because uh, this involves. Uh, I don't really know how to really explain this properly. It could be painful. That's all. If not done properly. Binding your breast. Uh, so your chest looks flat. Right. So you could look more masculine.
Masculine.
Masculine. And um, there are different ways of doing it. Some are more safe than others. And I know you've mentioned this before, Frankie, when we were younger, that sometimes it was hard to look in the mirror.
Hmm.
Sometimes because you could still see those aspects, those feminine aspects about yourself. So you wore a
Right.
binder the whole time, or as
Hmm.
often as you could, for as long as you could. So can you
Right.
uh, explain or describe what that feeling was like before you got your top surgery this year.
Well, so I've been binding for almost a decade now,
Mm-hmm.
and I never really worn a bra. I hated it so much. I hated the garment. I hated the way it was.
Yeah.
I hated the feeling of it. What it is, it just basically it made your chest more pronounced, and I didn't want that. I look in the mirror and like I hated it. I hated taking a shower with the light on. I hated, looking at the mirror. I always wore, really baggy clothing and, oversized hoodies because I hated the way the chest looks on my body.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now I really, really had that top dysphoria because I just hated it the most. So it came to the point where I had to use my next door neighbor and some friends to order binders to help flatten the chest. Now, because I was already so small chested to begin with, at the time, it took people a while to realize that I was binding versus I'm just slouching half the time. So like
Right, yeah.
before binder, I would just slouch all the time, so you just didn't see my chest. Like I just hated the appearance of it. Any appearance of that chest coming through, no, cut. Don't want
Nicked
it.
it. Yeah, nicked it. Yeah. So, I know that you showed me pictures before while you were explaining to me a very long educational moment. Ace bindings, like you had a vest at one point, and then
Mhm.
uh, and then like we'll use Mulan as
Mhm.
an example. She would wrap it using like ace, like for instance, like ace wraps,
Yeah.
right? Like if you sprain your ankle, you use those little long wrap thingies around
Mhm.
your ankle, but you also use that too. And other, I'm pretty sure there's probably more than just those two. But I know that you have used different methods of trying to keep your chest in.
Binded.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Was it
So,
painful for you, or did you suffer any side effects,
um,
physical side effects, or breathing side effects, stuff like that? Refresh my mind.
now if you're using ace bandages, which you shouldn't, so please don't. Like
Mhm.
I will buy you a binder if you're using ace bandages. Like I promise you, don't hurt your body more than it should. Now, ace bandages are good for restricting, which is why they're good for ankles and sprains and things like that, but they are not breathable. So
Mhm.
when you're breathing, your chest expands, to get air in, and it
Obviously, yes.
it it will not. It just hurts you even more. You just get um like burns and things like that from having it wrapped too tightly. Now,
Mhm.
binding safely, there are things called binders. Now, it's not just for the trans community. Other people have used it well. Men have used it, to suck in their gut and have their chest more pronounced.
Right, right,
But
right.
it is most commonly in the trans masculine community is to basically lessen the appearance of your chest to look like breast. Now it's just flat. Binders are normally just tank tops, but they're made of like majority of them are made of spandex and nylon.
So it's
So
breathable.
not yes and no.
Yes and
Um,
no.
it depends on your sizing and how you wear your chest binder.
Mhm.
Back when I met you, I started off with an extra small chest binder.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Now the chest binder again, this is like for me, I had a full torso binder, so it binded my chest and my stomach and like my hips, if anything. And it's if you took a bathing suit, like a one-piece bathing suit, and have a slightly rougher texture, but it compresses the whole body versus just
Ooh,
certain parts of it. That's basically what it is. If
okay.
you mix a corset with a bathing suit, that's how a binder feels like.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine that. And corsets are not okay. Like you need to get them done properly. For those that are not properly fitted, corsets could be a pain. I know I
Very
wore one.
dangerous.
Yeah, I wore one for prom just to keep the gut in. You know.
Right. And like,
Mhm.
it conforms to a shape,
Mhm.
but if not done properly, it will hurt you in the long run. Now, the
Mhm.
normal rule for binding with a chest binder is no more than 8 hours a day, and things like that. Now, for me, back then, I was very dumb, but I had that much, chest dysphoria that
Mm-hmm.
I have slept with my binder. I have worn it for multiple band practices. I have worn it for marching band competition. I have worn it longer than I should have, and that's not good. Now, if you're not small chested and you have bigger chest, it can hurt you in the long run because of how much pressure and how much binding that you're doing to your body.
Mm-hmm. But in your case, at the time you had your breasts weren't too big. Like they're not. We'll
No, they
say
weren't. They were like,
like
I think, I don't know breast sizes because, again,
A
I hated
A
myself
is
that
small.
much.
Yeah, yeah. A is small. These are big. We all know that.
I'm
So
pretty sure it was around A size,
okay,
if I had to
yeah.
say. It
Like
wasn't that
mhm,
big,
mhm.
but it wasn't gone.
Right? Yeah. No, 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 no. Yeah, I get it. So as because you wore them for way too long, did you actually suffer from any side effects?
I suffered a lot of back pain and like soreness from my body because, again, it's like contouring your body
Right.
in this one particular shape, and obviously how you're sleeping, how you're sitting, and all that stuff. But if it stays like that for such a long period of time, your body gets so weird about it because it's like, how are you breathing and how are you, expanding your body? Now, you need to take breaks, multiple times a day. And sometimes it'd be hard because the one I had was the tank top chest binder. So, like, trying to move out of my chest binder in like the middle of the bathroom, trying to put it back on was always like a hassle, stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. And it's very, very tight until, you break into it and it becomes looser and looser over time, the more you wear it. But when you get it, it's very constricting. It's like breaking in a pair of Doc Martens. Like that leather.
Yeah, yeah. Those are really hard to break in, to be honest.
Basically, that's what it is, and then it takes a while for it to break in, that it starts feeling more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with the appearance of a chest binder, you can see the outline of it in
Mm-hmm.
shirts and things like that, depending on how stiff it is. Because, again, chest binders aren't very flexible material. They're not like soft or anything. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
them are pretty rough. Some of them are soft or smooth feeling, but you can still feel the harsh outline of it through your clothes.
Right. Okay.
So that's why, like, wearing tank tops was hard for me because, like, either the binder was small enough where you can see it close to my armpit, but when tank tops are all the way down here,
Yeah, especially
you
bro
know,
tanks. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So like it was hard to wear them without, getting looked at and be like, oh no, are they wearing something else that's not an undershirt, you know?
Yeah, it's there's no need to there's no need for that anyways. Like mind your own business, right? Don't be looking at at another
Right.
person's clothing like that. Um Actually about that, since you moved, right, from your residence in Vegas to Florida, you had to wear one before you got your top surgery. You had to wear one for work in hot, humid, damp,
Yeah,
gross,
it was not
with your
fun.
job in the theater or in the theme parks, that sounds really annoying, like sticky and
It's
gross.
I just felt more suffocated, if anything.
Yeah, because it's
I
tight and
just felt
then
like, yeah, and the humidity, it's not super breathable.
hmm
So I'm just like, a lot more often than not.
and someone
I,
feeds
I
Franky five
started,
lattes,
right,
five
but
lattes to hydrate.
I started wearing it less and less because I started wearing work uniforms that wasn't, I started wearing oversized uniform, but like it was still tasteful enough where I was still able to wear it for work. So I started wearing less and less, but also because I worked overnights, nobody saw me, and I was like, whatever, it's fine. I can deal with
Yeah,
it.
yeah, no one's gonna really take a look-sees in the late
Right.
hours.
And
They'll
then
have
I
it.
also was wearing button-up shirts that were untucked, so it's not like it was conformed to my body at all.
Yeah, I like for me when I wear my button up, since it's more of just my style of clothes these days, I keep them tucked in. But I
Yeah,
know
I
that it's
don't.
yeah. But I mean, it's like I said, it's just
That's a
based on my
personal
style.
preference,
Yeah,
right?
personal preference of style, and then obviously for you, you have more reasons to keep it a certain
Right.
way.
Now, I used to dress differently in different ways just to avoid to the curvy shape. I kept it more boxed in terms of clothing and
Mm-hmm.
how I wore things. So like multiple layers or button-up shirts or checkered or something that takes the visualization of my
Mm-hmm.
chest and curves away into a more masculine appearance.
Actually, since about that, we talked a lot about you had top dysphoria or you just didn't like your chest at all. I wanted to talk about at the see, this is where like adjusting the language to make it sound like I'm not trying to be offensive or anything is sometimes
Are you
really
talking
hard
about
to
the
do.
menstrual cycle?
Yeah, a little bit. So because you started hormones when you moved to Florida. When you finally got the
Uh,
paperwork around. What
I
was
started actually back in 2016.
Oh yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
But so were you all that bothered being on your Ooh, I am so sorry. That's gonna pop up on the stream. Hold on, give me a second. Because it's recording all my audio, so my Facebook just went like boop, and I need to turn that. Let's mute that. Mute. Um, all right, continue. So, because of the chest thing, I was actually wondering, did
How
you
bottom
feel,
dysphoria was.
yeah, if you had any,
Um,
or you were just indifferent?
I do, but it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't as severe as chest dysphoria. Because
Mm-hmm.
here's the thing, the bottom dysphoria you can't see
Fair enough. Yeah, you're right. You can't see that.
versus the chest where you can't see and you want to change the appearance of it.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom dysphoria, I do have it, not as much compared to the chest dysphoria because like again I can wear anything and unless you're my partner or anything it's not going to matter, but that's my conclusion, like that's my uh I guess stand on it personally. Now a
Fair.
lot of people have severe bottom dysphoria or don't have bottom dysphoria and they're fine
Mm-hmm.
with their parts.
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone is different. I, I'm, I'm content with it for the most part, only because I'm not really. Uh, I still have what they call a phantom limb.
Okay. Which is?
So a phantom limb essentially is like you feel like a certain part is missing and it should be there.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I'm like, well, this would be nice if I had, you know, male anatomy, and I don't.
Right.
Now sometimes, you visualize things or sense things, and you feel like what it is to have a male anatomy or just type of anatomy, but it doesn't really exist on your body.
Mm-hmm.
In retrospect, it's like having like somebody who's an amputee, but they
Mm-hmm.
can feel like they have a hand. So like they have
No.
senses or like
Mm-hmm.
nerves or just what again they call it like a phantom limb or
Mm-hmm.
something similar to that effect where they feel like and they know it should be there, but it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. So you felt that sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes I
Yeah.
feel that. For others, more, for other people, they feel a lot worse, and for some people, they just don't feel it at all,
Yeah. So like
or they're content with their part, or again, not everybody wants the male anatomy who is transmasculine. Not everybody wants to keep their original parts, and vice versa. It's bottom dysphoria is more of a personal choice and whatnot versus chest dysphoria because one, bottom dysphoria costs a lot of money.
I can imagine. Yes.
The surgeries for that can be in multiple parts versus top surgery is one and done most of the time, unless you have liposuction or you
Or
need
you're
revisions and things like that.
or you do reconstruction,
Right.
stuff like that. Right, right.
But
Yeah.
with changing the anatomy or things like
Something
that,
more
that one's a little
internal.
bit more. It's more internal, but it's also more serious in terms of trying to get a cover, trying to get money for it. There's not as much surgeons within an area that can do these type of surgeries and things like that.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
again, a lot of them are in multiple stages, so you need to plan out stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and vice versa. Now, I'm not an expert on bottom surgery, but I've researched it for a good chunk of my time, and for me, it's not something that I desperately need or want at the moment. If down the line, maybe, sure. Like say
Maybe,
if
sure.
insurance covers it and stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
at the right now, I'm content with my body parts. Again, majority of my dysphoria was my chest.
Mm-hmm. And now
So
you're pretty happy-go-lucky with it now.
I'm tit free. So titless is fine. Instead
Yeah,
of toothless, it's titless.
yeah, because well, for those who don't know, or for those who know Franky, or in the way that I do, he does a lot of shirtless selfies these days, which is like totally fine because, dude, I mean, honestly, I see a lot of shirtless selfies of like my like mostly cisgendered male friends who are very masculine, who work out, or like total like gym bros, and they're like, oh yeah, look at this, you know. But then I actually wasn't expecting you to go nippleless, like quite literally. I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Um,
so. When you this is not me making fun of your body. Okay, it's just like you put a reference picture to Aladdin. Aladdin,
yeah.
cartoon Aladdin. Okay, so this is cartoon Aladdin, OG Disney animated film Aladdin. He didn't have nipples.
Nipples.
Obviously, because it's a cartoon. You don't want to get flagged for adult content. It's a kids movie. When you said you were getting top surgery, I might have just skimmed on your post about like what type of surgery, because you told me there's the keynote, right? Like you
Yeah,
just
the keyhole, double
the
incision,
keyhole,
things like that.
right? The keyhole and stuff like that. Uh, but I thought you're gonna do that and then like suture your nip back on. I didn't expect you to go completely nipless.
Yeah,
So it was just strange because it's like, all right, like you said,
it is.
Aladdin,
It's not
Aladdin.
common. It's
Yeah, it's not common. So like
right.
Aladdin, and then there's you, and I'm like, like something's missing here, and I don't know what it is.
Yeah. So originally, I was
Right.
gonna get nipple grafts, but the more I thought about it, the more I was like, do I really need it? Like, do I care for it? No. Now, say if I was a person who, enjoyed my nipples in terms of like,
Right. Just like
and
for looks, just like for looks and stuff.
well, for looks and for like activities and things like that.
Right, right.
Um, it actually I didn't decide for sure until 2 days prior to surgery
That
that if I
you had an
wanted the
option?
nipples or not.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
well, I knew I had an option,
Okay.
but I didn't make that option for myself, like for sure, that if I
Hmm.
wanted nipples or not until 2 days before surgery.
Technically, this is just probably just the weird question. Like, if you could get it, like for instance, I know you're pretty much past recovery stage. Like, it's the scars are slowly cleaning up itself now.
Hmm.
Um, can you get them back on now if you were to opt in?
Uh, no, because what it is during surgery, if they're putting your nipples back on, that means your nerves have to reconnect. Now my nerves
Ah,
are fully healed, it doesn't try to find it anymore. Like at the beginning of my surgery stages, I had nerves that were like, "Where's the nipple?" And I'm like, "It doesn't exist, bro. Stop it." You know,
but now
like
that
no,
it's not,
that's literally what it is. Yeah.
yeah, but now since it's not there, the nerves are
Mhm.
settled, so you can't anymore
Right.
unless you do it plastic
Unless
surgery
right,
like. But there's not gonna be any feeling there.
right. It would be a lot of it would be numb. It would be just there for aesthetic reasons.
Yeah, you're just doing it for aesthetics. But okay, so then well, there's like, would you do it for aesthetics in the future if you could?
Well, there are other ways versus surgery. I can get it tattooed. There are 3D
Fair enough.
nipples tattoos or 3D tattoos,
Yeah,
and
that's
there's
true.
also adhesives. So like
Like,
prosthetics.
okay, because I was thinking about I call it nip tape for dresses. Cocktail dresses when you go out to the
Yeah.
pub. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like nip tapes.
No, it's just like it's like prosthetic that you can put it with adhesive on it to resemble, you know, real nipples. No, I'm fine at the moment. I didn't really have any particular attachment to my nipples.
Fair enough.
So, and I also didn't want to deal with the recovery of nipples and things like that because like they
Oh
can
yeah, that.
scar, they can die, they can be numb. There's so many things that I was like, I don't want to deal with that, and I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
I asked my nurse friend, I was like, do I really need nipple? Do they benefit me? And I'm like, no, I don't need it. It's fine.
If you don't need it, well, I mean, nick it, and you literally did. You nicked it. It's off.
Yeah. I was like,
uh,
goodbye.
yeah, you like since you were in the early stages of your recovery, it was good seeing you like recovering well, and it looked good for the most part, like seeing everything not
Hmm.
so discolored, like discolored in terms of like the bruising, obviously 'cause they had to
Right,
cut you
right.
open and stuff. And then I think I think this is where I shed tears of joy for you, is when you were pretty much in the clear of lifting your arms above your head, and you walked
Hmm.
outside. I think you know this, but you walked outside, you took off your shirt, and you're like, I could finally feel the wind against
Oh
your
yeah,
flesh.
yeah.
Yeah, dude, I was just like,
It was so
oh,
cold. I was just like,
yeah,
I'm cold.
yeah, you were kind of crazy, like literally going outside when it's like a storm was brewing. Like you could see the dark clouds on the outside. It's like, what do you do? It's like,
Yeah, well, that's
I can't.
Florida for you.
Yeah, it's yeah, Florida. Ugh. And then you're just like, so this is what it feels like. They're like, okay, sweater's back on, and I'm just like, Franky, you finally did it. Oh my god. Cause
I
it's
mean, my favorite part was going to the pool for the first time. So
I think I missed that one.
I avoided going to the pools and water parks and beaches for such a long time because I
You
didn't want
get
to have to wear a binder and wear a
yeah,
rash guard or wear a t-shirt and all that
right.
other stuff that inhibits me from having fun because I'm already too anxious and, too dysphoric to do anything.
Yeah, no, it's completely fine. It's I can never understand what that feels like because that's not something that I do. I just know that wet like theme parks that involve water is just sometimes just not fit for everybody. I just have
Right,
slight water phobia, like to be fair. But obviously for you, like it was something more deep inside. Like you just didn't want to
right,
have the feminine parts of you be more obvious, especially if like you've had a wet t-shirt, right? Like you're wearing a
right,
white t-shirt, then you're having your like your binder on, then everyone could see like, yo, what's with this person?
right,
What are they wearing under? Like there's no need to ask more pressure. Like my eyes are up here type of things. Like why are you looking
right.
down there? My eyes are like right here. So it's been how many years now?
Since what?
It's been 7 years. So in from the time you choose 7 years, you feeling pretty happy?
Yeah, yeah, I mean,
Not counting coronavirus. Just say like,
right.
you feeling pretty
In terms
happy?
of like life in general and how things turned out, yeah, I'm pretty happy. Actually, my my parents were the one who suggested I actually go back home for surgery. So I was actually going to get it down here in Florida,
And
and
they
I was going
all,
to go ask money from
yeah.
them. I was going to ask for a loan. I'm like, hey, can I borrow like $3,000? And they're like, why don't you get it done here? And I was like, I never thought of it because it makes sense because recovery and things like that. And
But your
there's not a surgeon
parents,
at the time in Vegas,
mm-hmm.
so I found one in California. Now this was a shock to me because I'd never really talked to my parents about my transition. Like I've always been so open about it, but one on one with them, it wasn't
It's
always a thing.
right. I could assume, right? I could assume that there's some clashes involved, right? Ideologies.
It's just I that, and I also just what would I say to them? Like because it doesn't really affect them in a way that it affects me because I'm doing everything
Yeah.
by myself.
Yeah. So they invited you to
So
recover at home, take the surgery in California.
basically,
Okay.
right. Well, they said Vegas, and I'm like, well, there's not one in Vegas, but I can find some in California that's within driving distance, and that's how I ended up there.
Who took you back? Oh
But
no. Oh,
like driving wise,
yeah, obviously your parents, right?
well, for my pre-op appointment, it was Donica and my other sister. Same day of surgery was Donica, my dad, and my other sister. My mom was at home with the dogs.
Mm-hmm. And then you were recovering at home because I noticed the living room. I remember that same living room, and you were just like
Yep.
this on the couch.
I was solid on the couch for about 3 weeks.
Yeah, because
I,
you were worried about being literally out of commission for work just because you're recovering from something pretty
well,
drastic.
during that time, I was furloughed, and then I put myself on medical leave because my workplace was opening back up, but I was
Mhm.
like already committed with the surgery, and I was like, I'm gonna
I'm
go
gonna
do
do
this
it.
because I don't have any other
Yeah, yeah,
chance.
yeah, yeah. Do it
But
now.
then the next opening was like in August. I'm like, nope, I'm gonna do this now. So
Yeah.
I took a 6 week medical leave, and I stayed in Vegas for about 4 weeks, and I flew back my fifth week, and then I, was able to readjust to normal things in life, and then I could go back to work. And then I was working for about 2 months, and then I got refurloughed again. So, but now I'm currently about 4.5 months post-op. Basically everything's healed. It's just more of just scars and stuff like that. I have like full range of motion.
Mm-hmm.
I started working out with my roommate. I have no
Hey.
upper body strength,
Oh
so
no,
like
same
we
dude.
we did we did bench presses the other day, and I'm like, it's hurting here.
Oh like thinking about bench presses just hurt the
Right.
pecs. It's hurting the pecs right now. Like doing at home workouts is already one thing, and
Right.
then
Going to a
I
gym is another.
going to the gym is another. Actually, like before we go to our closing thoughts or like anything like that, I was wondering if you had any like we call these soapboxes in fulfilling destiny. It was our last bullet point. It's because you are a trans masculine male, right? And uh this is not necessarily we're bringing politics into here. It's just more like social cultural stuff, right?
Right.
Um, do you have any thoughts of what could be improved just for specifically your community that you think, or it could
Oh,
be
so many things.
Florida? I mean, I guess like give it to your top three, like it's like some things that you wish could be improved, some things that are like staying the same, or some things that are taking a downturn, like stuff like that. Any thoughts about issues
Well,
within the community?
I hate the fact that people are saying how Elliot Page came out is a loss for a community. There's been a discourse online
Right.
that the lesbian community lost an icon because Elliot Page came out, as trans. And I'm like, no, there can still be an icon. There's still a role model. They're just being
I
their true authentic self. But there's
right.
also this other part where Elliot had internalized transphobia with themselves to the point where they had to self-identify as a lesbian for a while
To
because
make
they
it
couldn't
fit.
identify as trans. Right. They
Right.
weren't comfortable. They didn't feel, you know,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't have the courage to be who they are. They just
Mm-hmm.
weren't unaware. They didn't,
Mm-hmm.
they try to label themselves and it didn't work out. And which
Mm-hmm.
happens. And that
Mm-hmm.
also with gatekeeping with insurances, my insurance needed a therapist letter, which I've never been a therapy for gender identity, but I needed one anyways.
Oh,
But I was able to get one. But it's still gatekeeping in terms of trying to get surgery covered because top surgery ranges between $6,000 to $12,000 easily. And that's
that's a
before
lot
any
of money.
transportation, hotel, any anesthesia, any biopsy, any of all that other stuff. That's just for the surgery itself, and not including liposuction and the nipple graft, because nipple grafts can also be an extra cost. Now, most surgeons offer free nipple grafts, but there are a few that does
I don't.
add
Or they
with
charge.
extra
Yeah, they
cost.
add. Yeah, it's an
Mhm.
additional charge.
So gatekeeping with insurances and normalizing pronouns. Now, like I put this in my emails and things like that. I put my
Mm.
pronouns underneath my name when I sign off.
Wow.
Or when I
Okay.
make description posts on my social media, I'll put my pronouns somewhere in there just so people know. Because again, just help destigmatize the rigid binary of looks of what a trans person or what a cisgender person looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Like take, for example, drag queens. People are very good at saying pronouns for drag queens, but they're not very good with saying pronouns for trans people because they don't fit that ideal box of what a male or female looks like, and vice versa.
Right, right. I
It's
do know.
very easy for somebody to be like, oh, I don't know any of the drag queen's name, but like,
RuPaul.
people would use. I don't like RuPaul. RuPaul's transphobic.
Oh, I'm just using his show as an example. Just using his
No,
show. Not yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but people are like, they'll say yes, queen, and things like they'll use all the female pronouns and adjectives for the drag queen, but when it comes to trans people in real life, they're like, no, why do you look like that? You don't look like a girl, you don't look like a boy, and vice versa. So the pronoun switching, we want to normalize the pronouns. We want to normalize what trans look like. It can be, again, everyone and anyone. Again, when people see me, they don't normally think trans. It doesn't come off as that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that was
From personal experience.
Okay, man, I was young.
But
I know better now.
it's not just you.
Yeah, I know. Now that
it's
I
not
know.
just you, so it's like,
yeah. If my younger me was here now and having this conversation with you, I would like to think definitely less awkward about it. It's like, yes, I'm educated now. So to my younger self, don't worry, I figured it out, 7 years later,
we got there.
We got there. We got there. We figured it out.
Well, that's why I'm so open about it on social media. Is that people just may not know, but they can learn along the way.
There you go. Your vlogs, man. Your vlogs.
That's why I have all these social media posts on Instagram and Facebook and things like that, where I let my family read those so they can come to their own conclusion and their own personal beliefs of it. And what I say is already said.
Yeah, they can take their time with it if they want to.
Right, exactly. So, in terms of activism and things like that, I also, I like to educate people, but also be like, this is not just a one-stop shop. Not every trans person does this. Not every non-binary person does this, and vice versa. But they can see the journey along the way. But how much happier and how much quality of life it improves
for them.
So if you're like, why do you need top surgery if you can, just fine, or why do you need to go on hormones and things like that? It improves the quality of life. That's all it is. You're improving your own quality of life. I actually I have a friend who's actually going on my podcast next week. They're non-binary.
Right.
They're Chinese American. They're not on hormones. But they just had top surgery. So there's no way there's no one way to transition, but we're all human. We're all the same people. We're all friends. We're all just straight across trying to live our best life.
I mean, honestly, like you said, to your friend who didn't opt to use hormone therapy like you did. For you, like I said, it improved your life, and right now, from what I see from your social media posts, your numerous social media posts, you look pretty happy to me. Definitely a lot more than back when we were 7 years ago, when we were just kind of
babies.
Going babies, and we were just trying to figure it all out, and everything was overwhelming and difficult. Just putting it lightly, it was hard. But then now it's just we could breathe a little easier. Our younger selves are like, hey, you made it, you did it. It's all right, keep going, keep going. You got this.
With the numerous Skype calls.
Oh God, don't even bring up Skype. Thankfully, Zoom is a lot more forgiving when it comes to that. So there it is, a 7-year upgrade, because I think I still have those screenshots for us. To be fair, yeah. Because like I said, you were, I say were, it's not past tense, still present. You are the first transgender person I ever met or had the pleasure of being friends with, because I honestly dread the thought of how I could have been with anybody else, because if I wasn't exposed to this, or who knows how I could have acted towards somebody who is like I said, currently transitioning, but is not, out about it, or, like you said, those check boxes in my head, right? At the time, if you're not educated, that's just by
assumptions.
It's by assumption, and it's just it's a human brain thing. We try to do it as simple as possible. That's why you fill check boxes in your head. So it's like, if I didn't meet you, or if we didn't get reacquainted in that way, who knows what that could have been for me down the line. Like, I could have been discriminatory, offensive, or I could be that one person who like slinks their way back into the closet more instead of being closer to their true authentic selves. So to you, I owe a lot when it comes to being more open with my perspectives of someone else who doesn't fit those norms, right? Like kindred spirits in that way. So like, to anyone
I
else,
still have your resume, right?
oh my god, please don't. Hey, okay, but if we're talking about furloughed, small update on my end. I have been given a letter that I will be laid off from my current job, the first job that I ever got in January.
Oh no!
I know, but I could always get rehired. That's the thing. Once the purple tier in California gets lifted, then schools get rehired. But I have upgraded where I am now. I got a new job to be a tutor for a school district. So there's that. But it's like, it could be an end of a journey for me for that part of my life. But new things are happening. Like for you,
dang, that's 7 years you've been at that job.
Don't talk about it. Oh, I'm just kidding. No. It honestly, it's great. Like for instance, like that 7-year close. We could close this part of like that chapter where, like, well, I can't say close this chapter until the end of the year because 2020 has been giving me headaches.
Yeah, mood.
Yeah, mood, right? But like I said, like, you are now starting to live your real, true, authentic self with the surgery, right? At least of this summer. And then I'm starting to find some more new roles in my life. Obviously, like with this podcast, my new job, and then like other shenanigans. If you follow my personal Twitter, you'll know. But things like that. So, any last thoughts, Franky, before we give this a close?
It does get better. 7 years ago, it's in very dark places, but persistence and support definitely helps bring to life, and never stop educating yourself. Like, that's the one thing that really helped me the most, because I had to do most of my transition by myself. It's educating myself for it.
And even
I'm
for
here
allies
now.
too.
I'm living, I mean, I'm living the dream, but I'm furloughed at the moment. But
hey,
regardless,
we take wins when we get them. We take the W's when we get them.
Right. This part of my life, I'm happy. I'm on hormones. I have wonderful friends. I've supported family. Now I have, I just got top surgery, which is a great weight off my shoulders and my chest. And
quite literally.
I can start, doing more things. I can continue being an activist, but I can also continue pursuing my passion and my career force. So hopefully things will get better, but things are better now than it was 7 years ago. 100%.
100%. And then, like you said, like for my soapbox, before we close this episode, is this was your experience, your journey, and it was personal to you, and you went through a lot of hurdles from 7 years ago up until now. And then, like, for me, as your friend, as a fellow activist as well, I also need to educate myself too. If that means talking to another person who is trans and non-binary, or wherever they are in between, like, you need to educate yourself. Don't wait for someone to tell you how to do it. Go out of your way to figure it out also. Like, what could this mean? Like, what are the nuances? What are the struggles? And then, I think it's learning something new could be what's so scary for people. And that's why they are very they can lash out to sudden changes or even slow changes because it's something that they're not used to, and
right,
it's mm-hmm,
which is why it's different from my transition because I
mm-hmm.
always been this way. I
Yeah,
didn't come
yeah.
out so suddenly and then 180.
Yeah, yeah. You did 180, so it was like it's just more of like fixing like the smaller, like I can't say smaller, but like the little things like
Like,
saying he, them, they,
right.
their clothes, right? And oh, obviously like top surgery and stuff. But then to others it could be quite drastic, a complete 180. They were this
Hmm.
person for say 30 years of their life, and then they want to be their true authentic selves maybe at their 40th birthday, and then they're like,
Yeah, I've
this
seen
is
it, and it's marvelous.
it's it's good because it's like maybe there was more to that story, and then if they get to be at that eventual goal of being happy with their own body within their own skins, that's like the best thing that we can hope for. And then that's why I encourage our viewers out there, like if you have friends or if you're an ally, continue to learn more stories, continue to meet people who are different than you, because you can learn something from it. And then obviously I learned a lot in my 7 years with Franky. I'll say 7 years following his social media posts because I could never get rid of them. But honestly, it's great spending about, I think it's about like an hour 15 talking to you about this, because I know I see it in social media posts, but having you tell me what that process was like in your voice, because dude, your voice was so squeaky 7 years ago. So like when you did the
That was really deep.
yeah, I know it's supposed to end this, but this is like my small excerpt. When he started his hormone therapy, like I don't know, your second week or so on them, oh my god, your voice cracks were so funny. I'm not gonna lie, it was really funny. You're
No, they were. It's
like
second puberty, so like,
you're like when you have a sore throat and it's very
mhm.
hoarse and cracky, that was you for weeks. And I'm just like, when is that? Where is that? That decibel going to drop, son? When is it going to drop? And then of
And it
course
dropped.
it, yeah. So like when you did your like Insta stories and you're like showing like what's new in the theme parks. I was about to say the company name. I was this close to saying the company name. The theme parks, right? And then I heard your voice drop. I was just like, who the, who is this? New phone, new guy. Like, hello? But yeah, so like,
New phone, who dis?
new phone who's like, excuse me, where is that squeaky voice?
Where's the chipmunk voice?
Where's the chipmunk voice? So like, it's gonna be like if we have this conversation again 7 years later, it's just like, oh great, how much more has changed since
Right.
then. So maybe this could be something that we revisit 7 years later. Like, all right, Zoom version 27 will come out, and then or maybe Skype will make a comeback. Skype business version 60 comes out, and then I get to do Meet Franky version 2. What has changed since then? So yeah, so it looks like that's it from both of us today. I'm actually I need to take. I don't know how to take pictures, so I want to take a picture of you, my dude. You're probably gonna have to do it for me because I as fancy as the
Are you
setup
trying to take a
is.
screenshot?
Yeah, as fancy as the setup is, I have no big brain, no big brain for it.
Let me. It's like you don't know how to do a screenshot. Is that what you're saying? You can do Control S. You have a Windows, right?
Yes,
Use Control S, and it should bring up the clip.
Control S did not.
Uh, Press the start button.
Yes. Oh wait, I could.
Type it.
Snipping tool. The
Yeah.
genius. Okay, please. Yeah, it'd be like that sometimes. All right, smile, dude. Oh God, I look crazy. How do I do this?
So do I.
Later. So, well, actually, before we actually do that, but because I went off a terrible segue. My apologies. So to all our viewers, thank you for listening in to an hour-ish or so with Franky and I. And we will see you on our next episode, where we also meet another person from the trans community. So it'll be another kind of like interview style where we get to know what that journey was like for them. So I'm pretty excited about that. I hope it goes, like I said, scheduling has been weird, but I'm pretty excited to learn another perspective, another story, and another lesson to learn. So that'll be pretty exciting. So Franky, I hope you tune in as well too.
Oh, I will.
And for everyone else who hasn't done already, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, drop a heart in the comment if you like, and we'll see you on the next episode. And we slate in 3, 2, 1. See ya.